大家好，我是雅儿。今天要和大家探讨的主题是晶片不只是矽，是文明的呼吸。晶片如何定义现代世界？台湾为何成为经济咽喉要道？德国之声新闻第一阶段绪论被忽略的文明空气。大家好，在开始之前，我想请大家做一个简单的动作，触摸你身边的任何电子设备，不论是你的手机、平板、耳机等等。很多人以为我们生活在一个由软体、由 AI、由演算法驱动的世界，但事实上，我们生活在一个游戏定义的世界。如果说20世纪的经济动脉是石油，那么21世纪的文明呼吸就是晶片。没有石油，世界会停下，但没有晶片，现代文明会立即失忆、失能，然后解体。
Taiwan's economy is powering ahead. As a manufacturer of the world's most cutting-edge chips, the economy grew nearly 9% last year. Projections for economic growth in 2026 are being revised upwards. Driving this growth is an artificial intelligence-induced export boom, but heavy dependence on semiconductor exports has gotten some people worried. Taiwan is protected by a silicon shield. Its critical role in the global semiconductor supply chain has allowed the island's economy to thrive, despite the constant threat of a Chinese invasion dragging on growth. The semiconductor sector is a self-ruled island's primary growth engine, linked to vast swaths of the economy: logistics, financial services, technical consulting, and infrastructure investment. If the chip industry is healthy, Taiwan's economy is in good shape. Taiwan is the global leader in semiconductor manufacturing, producing over 2/3 of the world's semiconductors. The next biggest is South Korea, with 12%, the US also with 12%, and China at 8%. It completely dominates the production of advanced leading-edge chips. TSMC manufactures more than 90% of the most sophisticated semiconductors, which are heavily used in AI.
Well, behind the growth story in Taiwan, it is really this massive AI boom globally that has fueled the demand on semiconductor products. And of course, if we look deeper into where the demand comes from, a large part indeed comes from the United States because of the massive increase of the investment by a lot of hyperscalers like Microsoft, Amazon, and etc. So this is really the reason behind this stellar performance of Taiwan last year.
Taiwan's GDP per capita has consistently surpassed the average in the G20 group of rich nations since 2020.
Taiwan has spent decades building this really comprehensive, sophisticated semiconductor industry. You know, the vast majority of the world's most sophisticated chips that you need in everything from electrical vehicles to your smartphone to sophisticated weaponry are made here. And it's particularly because of those exports of those semiconductors that Taiwan has sustained really quite impressive economic growth over the last few years. Last year, Taiwan clocked in at more than 8.5% GDP growth, and it's estimated at more than 7% for this year, which, you know, obviously loads of countries around the world would love to have.
Some argue that Taiwan is over-dependent on microchips. The industry accounts for around 1/5 of Taiwanese GDP. Services are 60% of the economy, but this sector is completely intertwined with the microchips industry. During the 1960s and 1970s, the island experienced what is known as the Taiwan Miracle, a period of unprecedented economic expansion as it transitioned from light industry to manufacturing and technology. In the 1970s, the government began to develop microchips using technology transfers from the US. The heavy concentration of semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan makes it a choke point. Days or weeks without their manufacturing would affect the supply and price of everything from AI products, electronics, and cars. Just look at how the disruption of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil choke points, is affecting the global economy. At Davos in January, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, "The single biggest threat to the world economy, the single biggest point of single failure, is that 97% of the high-end chips are made in Taiwan. Bessent went on to say that if Taiwan were blockaded, or if that capacity were destroyed in a conflict, it would be what he called an economic apocalypse. The Trump administration is trying to bring microchip manufacturing back to the United States, and microchips are part of this. Bringing microchip manufacturing to the U.S. is difficult. Construction costs are high, at up to $40 billion per plant, and it can take years to build facilities. Replicating Taiwan's manufacturing ecosystem requires not only capital and equipment. The highly skilled labor isn't there. It requires sophisticated supplier networks, and there are complex environmental regulations to navigate.
Well, indeed, if you look at the strategy for Taiwan right now, it is pretty much not a choice, but a necessity for these firms, especially TSMC, to invest overseas to cater the demand for their clients. So under this current geopolitical climate, they really have no choice. So the key challenge here is really about whether TSMC or the Taiwanese economy can cope with this new trend from made in Taiwan towards made by Taiwan. And indeed, if Taiwan is able to continue to hold the key in R&D, if it can export this technology, not really only directly from Taiwan, but also try to produce like products overseas and sell to other markets, this is pretty much like a new reality it will need to face and a challenge that it will need to overcome. So it is indeed happening, but I'm quite sure that the majority of the production will still be in Taiwan, even though the share may be lower than before.
China has accelerated its efforts to build homegrown chip-making capacity. Since 2022, the U.S. has been gradually introducing export restrictions on advanced chip manufacturing equipment to China. Since then, China has ratcheted up investment in its domestic semiconductor industry. China's semiconductor self-sufficiency is currently around 33%, but it plans to raise this to 80% by 2030. Long-term forecasts are difficult during times of global uncertainty. What are Taiwan's prospects like in the short term?
Well, in the short run, our challenge remain because of what is happening around the world. If we do see the energy supply shortage and also high inflation, that will definitely affect the demand for semiconductor products exported from Taiwan. And under that scenario, it's possible to see a slower growth in Taiwan in 2026. So if we take into account, let's say, a prolonged war scenario of 4 months, again, no one really knows whether it will finish tomorrow or it will last even longer. Taiwan will still grow at around 5% in 2026, which is still quite a decent number, supported by the AI demand, but it will be a slower pace compared to what happened last year.
Taiwan has shown how its flexibility has allowed the economy to develop quickly.
Taiwan's manufacturing in particular has shown that it's really quite adaptable, because a lot of the machine tools that make the machines that make things are made here in Taiwan. So, I mean, during the pandemic, we saw that Taiwan's manufacturing base was able to quickly shift to producing quite a lot of PPE, while other countries around the world were struggling to get their hands of it. And in the last few years, we've also seen Taiwan's economy really start switching to producing kind of more defense equipment, security, and that sort of thing.
That ability to adapt may be Taiwan's biggest advantage of all. Taiwan has repeatedly reinvented itself in response to global challenge. The challenges are real. The threat of Chinese invasion, global supply chain pressures, and growing competition are all threats. Taiwan's strength may not just be its dominance in chips, but its ability to evolve beyond them.
而这条呼吸道的总开关，此刻正握在一个位于西太平洋名为台湾的小岛手中。第二阶段核心数据，台湾晶片停产的末日，我们不需要想象太远。让我们直接看2026年的最新经济模型。如果台湾的半导体产线因为任何原因，不论是自然灾害、能源危机或是地缘冲突停产超过30天，会发生什么事？我们来看一下这张表格。这就是外媒之所以反复警告 一旦台湾出事，一切就完了的原因。这不是夸大其词，而是物理性的替代方案不存在。即便美国、欧洲、日本现在投入数千亿美元建立晶圆厂，要在2026年赶上台湾，累积了40年的良率与生态系，依然是天方夜谭。第3阶段 AI 时代的独家门票位，什么大家现在对台湾晶片如此疯狂？关键在于 AI 的爆发。在2024年到2026年这2年间，全球进入了运算力竞赛。从生成式 AI 到自动驾驶，人类对算力的需求呈指数级成长。而要支撑这些算力，我们需要的是最先进的逻辑晶片与高频宽记忆体。台积电不仅是生产商，它是全球创新的实体化窗口。NVIDIA 的架构在强美，有台积电的2奈米或 A16 制程，它只是电脑里的绘图稿。Apple 的晶片设计再精妙，没有台湾的 CoWoS 进阶封装技术， iPhone 就不过是块昂贵的玻璃。台湾晶片已经成为进入 AI 时代的唯一门票，谁掌握了门票的分发权，谁就掌握了未来的竞争力。第4阶段为何无法取代？细盾背后的工艺与聚落。很多人问，难道我们不能在亚利桑那州或德勒斯登复制一个台湾吗？答案是，你可以复制工厂 Fab， 但你无法复制聚落与工程文化。在台湾，半导体产业不是一家公司，而是一个紧密交织的神经网络。从晶圆生长、光照制作、化学药剂供应，到最后的封装测试，这些公司分布在不到300公里的范围内。这种极致的沟通效率，是台湾晶片能够在技术更迭极快的环境下，依然保持 90% 以上良率的秘密。此外，还有台湾特有的职人精神半导体制造，是容错率为0的产业。一个微小的震动，一粒肉眼看不见的灰尘，就能毁掉价值数百万美元的晶圆。台湾工程师对制程的专注与研发韧性，构筑了一道比地理海峡更难跨越的技术鸿沟。第5阶段地缘战略中的关键单点，这让台湾在国际政治中扮演了一个极其特殊的角色。我们称之为互制的依赖。西方国家需要台湾晶片来维持经济增长，而区域大国也需要台湾晶片来推动自身的数位转型。这种谁都不能失去台湾的现状，让晶片成为了和平的筹码，但这也是一种脆弱的强大。身为全球经济的咽喉要道，台湾的任何风吹草动都会引发全球金融市场的地震。当外媒说一切就完了，他们指的是全球供应链的崩塌，这将导致长达10年的经济衰退，甚至引发人类文明在数位转型路径上的大倒退。第6阶段，结与守护全球文明的火种。各位，我们必须认清一个事实，晶片不再仅仅是商品，它是数位主权的基础。台湾半导体产业的重要性已经超越了单纯的商业范畴，它成为了全球共同体的一部分。我们保护台湾的产业稳定，本质上就是在保护我们每个人的生活方式，从我们口袋里的手机到支撑全球医疗、交通与能源运行的后台系统。晶片虽小，却重若千钧，它是沙子片成的神经元，而台湾正是这具全球数位身体的心脏。另外，我们来谈谈晶片外交的现实面，算力及国力。在2026年，一个国家的强弱不再仅看军队人数，而是看其拥有的算力总量。台湾作为算力的铸币厂，其地位等同于20世纪的石油出口国，不只是生产，更是研发。台湾的价值在于其与全球顶尖 IC 设计公司的深度协作能力。这种共生关系使得将生产线移出台湾的成本远高于维持现状。供应链的脆弱性，尽管各国推动晶片本土化，但台湾在特殊化学品与半导体设备零件的全球市占率依然惊人。这证明料半导体是一个高度全球化的产业，任何试图去台湾化的举动，短期内都会造成技术倒退。 以上透过将晶片比喻为文明呼吸，深入浅出地解释了台湾在国际赛局中不可替代的地位。好了，我是雅儿，如果你对本期节目有任何意见，欢迎留言。如果您喜欢我的影片，请订阅我的频道，下期再见。